My man Ken Rideout. Welcome to the Intangible Podcast. I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this for a long time because your story has been unbelievable and it's just been great to get to know you as a person, but also as a friend. And so excited to have you.
Well, thank you for having me. I love you. I think you're I tell people all the time, it was the luckiest, one of the luckiest transactions of my life. I bought your house in Nashville when we moved here from LA, and to be such good friends. You know, when you each have four children and they're at that age where it's like, you know, in their early teens, adolescence, it feels like we're both on someone else's schedule all the time. But when I do get to spend time with you, I genuinely love hanging with you. It was a true blessing to get to meet someone so cool. And how often do you get to be friends with the guy you buy the house from?
I know. It still kind of like shocks me because, you know, every person I talk to when I say, "Oh yeah, I'm friends with the guy that bought my home," and they're like, "What?" It's like, they usually don't happen, you know. And so, but I remember it was COVID when we put our place on the market. Right. You came through. I don't know. Did you guys come to town, or we was all doing this?
I came to town with Shelby, and we couldn't get in, so we drove by, and then Shelby came back and looked at it by herself. So I had never even seen it until we moved in. Yeah. The day we walked in, and I was like, you know, coming from LA, and prior to that, I lived in New York and London and Hong Kong, and always predominantly lived in apartments. So to live in a house, and especially such a nice house, I was like, you know, for a long time, my friends would send a picture of your house. I'm like, I don't want to send a picture without context because it can seem like from where I grew up, like bragging. And I'm like, it's nice. It's Nashville though. I'm used to like New York and LA prices. So, but it's been great living here, man. Meeting good people like you, Eric Decker, just a really good crew of people and a lot of former athletes. I love it. I love all the people here are so cool. It's just, it's refreshing.
Well, like I said, I'm so excited about this interview and getting it for other people to hear your story. I know you've done a lot of these things, and you've said this before. You said that you didn't grow up thinking about being a world-class runner, you know. But before we get into all the medals and all the things that you've done in your career, let's talk about the mess.
I was really good at making a mess.
What was it like growing up in Boston? And do you think that that environment still lives in your mindset today?
Definitely. You know how it is. I mean, growing up the way you grew up in Mississippi, like you're worlds away from where you were, but it's like one of those things when like the heat gets turned up, you remember all the lessons that you learned as a child. And I was trying to explain this to my children the other day. Is like, when you are a child, obviously when you're going through it, you don't realize this, but when you're a child, you're like a sponge that has absorbed nothing. So every meaningful experience is the first time you've ever experienced something.
Right.
First time you see like two grown men fight. It's traumatizing. Like you see someone, I mean, a real fight. And it's like those kind of experiences, especially traumatic experience, the first time you learn them, and growing up in the inner city in Boston during a incredibly like tense racial period in history, like the forced busing, and the things that I saw and was subjected to just don't even seem real at this point. Yeah. And when you're in it, you think that that's the norm. That's what everyone is seeing, this kind of like racial tension, that people would use racial slurs like, oh, no big deal. Like it wasn't even remotely taboo. And even as a kid, I just remember thinking like, whether it was race or religion, I always remember thinking like, why would I dislike someone because of the religion that they adhere to or their race? But nevertheless, everyone around me had very strong opinions. And, you know, when I trying to explain this to my children in a diplomatic way without traumatizing them is difficult. And even at times my wife will say to me like, yo, you need to tone it down. Like they don't need to hear those stories about, you know, when I was working in the prison and the things that I saw and was subjected to. But yeah, growing up in the inner city, I lived with my mother. My parents were divorced, much like all the people that I knew. And I lived with my mother and my grandmother, who had a son, my mother's brother, who was a lifelong heroin addict. So it was completely normal for us to have junkies coming by the house all the time. And I mean, we lived with a junkie, and it was, when he was high or like, had scored drugs and was in a good mood, he was like a sweet, nice guy. I loved him. And he was handicapped. He had like one leg was banged up. So we always walked with a crutch. His name was John Barnett, but we called him Barney. And, seeing that as a kid and seeing someone shooting heroin is something that you'll never forget.
You've actually witnessed watching your uncle do it.
Oh yeah, and he wouldn't do this like openly. He wouldn't be brazen about it. But I like more than once walked in and Barney was shooting heroin, and I was like, even to this day, if I watch a movie where someone is shooting drugs, as soon as the needle starts to get near the skin, I always tell my wife, tell me when they're done shooting up. I can't look at it. It's so traumatizing, which again is all part of the story, because I had such contempt for people that used drugs and behaved the way they did, that to find myself years later working on Wall Street addicted to opioids and prescription painkillers was a big part of my story, and a big part of why I went from someone who was super optimistic and I think very well adjusted socially to someone who ideated constantly on suicide, thinking, because for a long time I thought the only way I'm going to get out of my addiction is through suicide, because I had tried so many times to stop taking these drugs, and it was so painful and so hard, by far the hardest thing that I've ever done. But like with the childhood stuff, when you're in it, you just realize it becomes your norm, and you're just like, well, I did this, I'm going to have to fix it. And eventually I did.
Yeah. And so when you think about your story, you think about the pain, the struggle, the addiction. Do you run now to heal, or do you run to show that you survived?
Both. A little bit of everything. There are days where I run, where I'm frustrated. In early days, especially in my like recovery, it would be a form of penance. Like, okay, I did this to myself, and this is the punishment that I'm going to have to this is my cross to bear. And there were times where I would be running and just hating every step. I mean, there still are, but back in the early days, I would just be like, okay, good, you deserve this. And the more that the days where I really didn't want to do it was suffering. Those are the days where I'd really push myself hard, not thinking like, I'm so tough, I'm going to do this. I'm like, I'm going to push myself so hard until I have a heart attack and get away from this pain.
Wow, man, that's, I'm trying to think about areas of my life where I had that kind of pain, and I mean, I grew up in Mississippi, where we grew up on a farm. We were out, and it was a struggle. You didn't know what you didn't know. You didn't know you was poor. You didn't know,
that's right.
The heat and how hot it is to be out here working in the fields. But I didn't really come to know real pain until later in life, when they start to think about, not having dad around, having been a young kid at 7 years old, 8, 9, 10 years old, helping to help your mom take care of your brother and sisters. And so it doesn't get to later in life when you start having kids where I started to realize, oh my gosh, there was some trauma there for me, and everyone thinks trauma can, is sexual trauma or abuse and all those different things, but there's a lot of micro traumas. And I'm so happy that you said, traumatize you. I hate that you had to see that, but I was also happy that you said it the way you did, because those are little micro traumas that we get that we never know how it's going to affect us throughout our lives.
That's right.
And so when I start thinking about from a masculinity standpoint, for you growing up in that environment, what are some of the things that you had to peel back to get to a place of healing?
Yeah, well, first of all, when it comes to trauma, the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to you is the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to you. You don't have to be like, you know trauma and pain, and you don't get to measure it on a scale and say well, you feel slighted by your parents and they didn't pay attention to you, so therefore your trauma doesn't count as much as someone who was sexually abused. Right. And yeah, maybe on the grand scheme of things, you'd rather have one than the other, but it's still, for some people, struggle with that. And it's easy to minimize someone else's struggle and say oh, you didn't have it that bad. And look at what this guy went through. Dealing with things that you can't control become incredibly difficult, because I want to be in control of everything. I want to manufacture everything the way I want it to be. I want everything to be perfect, but that's not how life works. It wasn't until I had children and started to really not necessarily initially reflecting on my own trauma, but looking at myself as a dad and realizing like I am not doing a good job with some things, like, and I still don't. I think that being a parent is the hardest thing that I've ever done. Nothing else even comes close, because it's not something you can suffer through. It's not a workout that you can do like, oh, I'll fucking do any workout. Right. When you have to deal with kids who are like maybe being irrational in your mind, or they're having their own struggles with social situation, it's very difficult not to want to go down there and like someone's not being nice to your daughter. So my reaction is like, I'll go down there and beat the shit out of her dad. And it's like, that's not going to help anything, right? That part for me has been very difficult. And when I started to like really think about why was I doing some of the things that I was doing and the way I was interacting with my wife and my children, it's, I then had to take the step of going to, on-site workshops where I don't know if you've ever talked about it here. I don't want to like violate your trust, but.
Oh, no, you're good. I mean, let's talk about on-site.
Okay, good. Because I had known that it's called the Trauma Healing Center, but I just knew it as like a mental health therapy place where you could go and get help. So
I was set the stage on it. So on-site is a place where, if you're dealing with, whether it's drug abuse, if you're dealing with marital issues, if you're just dealing with, you just want to grow as a human, they have an amazing facility here in Tennessee where you can go and just work on yourself. Yeah. And so I remember, I went to on-site and done some work and been in the space that I'm in with psychology and, just really trying to make sure that I'm growing as a person so that when I, get in front of people, I can say I've done the work, I've been there, done this work, and then, then having things in life that hits you when you're making this transition out of sports where your identity is wrapped up in football and not really understanding and knowing how your transition is supposed to happen and what your purpose is now. And so I wanted to be proactive and get ahead of that, as well as, dealing with things within a marriage, because it's very important to, that marriage takes a lot of work. Very difficult. A lot of work. And so, I remember I went there, had an amazing experience there and came back and I remember you and I hanging out one day and we were having a conversation about the work that I was doing. And he was like, well, sign me up. Tell me, tell me about this place. And I was so excited for you to go there and waiting to hear your experience. And you come out with the experience that you had. Yeah. And I was really excited for you to see that not only that you had the experience, but you start to really, implement those things in your life. And so that's the onset of what on-site has been and done. And again, the work never ends. You're constantly still evolving and doing things. And so your experience on-site was, I needed to go do this for myself to work on what? I mean,
Yeah. No, where I was in my life with, from the outside looking in, it would be very easy to think that things were maybe squared away more than they actually were. And that, like I said, that kind of work is so much more difficult than physical work. And I remember you had gone there and I was struggling with my marriage, in addition to a bunch of other things, not unlike what anyone else goes through with marriage. I think with marriage, what a lot of people don't understand, especially people who haven't been married, is like 1 minute you're hanging out with your friend and you're doing awesome things and it's fun and you go out and party and you go in here for the weekend. Then when you have children, now you're running a very serious business together and it requires, and the store's open 24/7. And if you haven't had those conversations about like who's getting up every night, the baby wakes up every night, not like let's both sleep in. No, every night. And that you start to find out like,
because there's an assumption. The assumption is that the wife is going to get up and do this
100%
from the male perspective.
Of course. But listen, I was lucky. I knew in advance that this is what my wife wanted more than anything. She wanted to be like a traditional wife and get up with the kids and be a homemaker. But it still doesn't change the fact that when you've been up every day for like 3 weeks and you're like, you got to get up with the kids today. And selfishly, I'm like, well, I got to get up and go to work tomorrow. I need to sleep. But those kind of things like start to weigh on people. And if you don't do the work and stay ahead of that stuff, it's very easy to let a ton of resentment build up. And look, it's like, it's I don't think it shows vulnerability in going there. I think it shows strength to take responsibility and accept your responsibility in every role, as a parent, as a husband, to do this work and try to be better. And otherwise, we're just guessing.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of difficult decisions and conversations that have to be had. And I clearly didn't have role models that showed me how to have a successful relationship. I saw a quote the other day on Instagram. It said, I didn't grow up with role models. I grew up with people I didn't want to be like. And all I could think was like, that's exactly what happened to me. So I didn't know what I wanted, but I know what I didn't want.
You've done some amazing things in your life, not just from running, but, you know, from a financial guy, from prison guards. And so, like, what was that motivating factor to say, I don't want to be like these guys, and here's what I'm going to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't even know what I was modeling my like perfect life after, or what I wanted, but I knew I didn't want this. And I knew, I mean, you know, I played sports my whole life, mainly hockey. So when we would play the other towns surrounding where I grew up in Somerville, you know, you'd see the nicer towns and I'd see the nicer house and I'd be like, that's what I want. I want to be married, have a stable relationship. I want to have children. I want to have a nice car. I just wanted like a stable, like picture perfect life. And the only thing I knew was that I should go to college. Didn't know anything about college. Literally, I went to my senior year in high school. I got recruiting letters for football, and I wasn't very good, but I had made the league all-star team, and that was enough to get on the radar for some teams. I don't even know that they saw tape on me. They were just like, well, if you made the all-stars, let's recruit him. I played quarterback, and one of the state schools just outside of Boston, Framingham State, sent me a letter. I went out there. I filled out the application because it was one of those applications where you fill out the little bubble with the pencil. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is
little
easy.
Bubble test.
And I remember asking the kids on the team when I went to the recruiting trip, like, what's the easiest major? This is how naive I was. And they're like, sociology. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm taking. I didn't want to do I wasn't very good at math. I was never a very good student. I became a good student out of necessity, but, and that's how I made the decision to study sociology at Framingham State. And I went there, I played football and hockey, you know, beg, borrow, steal, and cheat my way through, and just got through, you know, like, like, hey, we don't care how you get to the finish line, just get there. And that's exactly what I did. And
what was your degree in?
Sociology. Yeah. Which I actually liked. It is a good fit for me because I do like social sciences, and I am very interested in all things like sociology related.
And how did you transition that into Wall Street?
So I moved to New York as a pharmaceutical sales rep for a smaller, like, kind of no-name pharmaceutical company, which is the only place that would have ever hired me. And when I got to New York, I was playing in a men's hockey league, and I met a French-Canadian guy who played hockey, obviously, and he was on the team that I was on, and we were the scrub team, like a bunch of guys who signed up, and they were just assigned to this team because everyone else had their own team organized. You know, they had uniforms. It was crazy.
And they've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, but these were like older guys. Like, I had just stopped playing college hockey. Like, I was pretty good relative to everyone else. And this kid said to me, hey, we need an assistant trader on this commodities trading desk. Would you be interested? And I had been seeing all these finance kids my age making huge money at the local gym that I was working out in. And I was like, man, if these idiots can make money, like, I can go there and kill it. But I didn't know, I didn't know the first thing about finance. But like anything else in life, you just need to get sometimes a seat at the table to figure it out. And that job gave me entree into the world of finance. And as soon as I kind of got a taste for it, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what to do here. It was all relationships and hustle.
All right.
A lot of hustling.
I'll be remiss if I don't ask a question about your hockey experience. You don't strike me as a guy that's going to back down from anybody. You know, were you the team goon, or were you like,
you know what's
the
funny
peacemaker?
No, as a kid, I was never overly aggressive. I think that I learned to be aggressive as an adult out of necessity. Certainly working in finance, I found that to be more aggressive than any sports I've played. You're there with a bunch of alpha male types, and everyone is super aggressive. There's a lot of money. And when you're on a trading desk, there is money to be made on every trade. So everyone's fighting for every trade. And as an inter-dealer broker, we were representing clients. So the client would call in, tell you where they want to buy something. Someone else might hear that and try to buy it in front of you. It was very, very, very aggressive. And I was, but with regards to hockey, through college and high school, there was no fighting in hockey. It was like you'd get kicked out. It was like the NBA. There was no zero tolerance. Only fighting started you can only fight in the juniors and pros. And juniors is like
so I learn something every day.
Yeah, yeah. Anytime you see that they have a full mask on, they would never fight. And for a long time, even if the guy had a half a shield on in the NHL, that was taboo to fight with that on. A lot of times they would take it off themselves. And you definitely don't want to take your helmet off if you don't have to in a fight, right? You want to try and keep your head down and hope they punch your helmet because it would hurt. You can really hurt your hands. But first I was working in on that trading desk for about, I want to say like 2 months, and I was covering some of the younger traders at Enron, which was a huge up and coming power player in the energy trading space. And the guys who I was working with, a couple of them were harassing and hazing me so badly. I was like, it was literally like I was being hazed on like the worst of worst college football teams and like some JUCO college where they're just like taking it to the extreme. And long story short, one day I just had enough, and the guy threw a dry eraser at me, just this dopey guy. And I slapped him so hard in the face, like almost knocked him out. And they were like, basically, you're fired. And I was just so happy that they gave me 2 weeks severance. It was crazy. But like a lot of things in my life that we'll get into, the things that you think are going to be like the worst things that's ever happened to you, a lot of times can end up being the greatest thing that's ever happened to you because you're forced to deal with those situations immediately. So when I got fired, I mean, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't even know we had competitors. And I called one of the competitors, cold call, and a lot of them had worked with these people I was working for, and they didn't know me.
Right.
And they were like, they thought I was prank calling them. So, and like, trying to play a prank. I'm like, hey, I work over here and I just got fired and I'm the junior guy. And eventually I got in touch with the traders at Enron, and they connected me with the senior trader at Enron who loved the story. And he was from Massachusetts. And long story short, in like 2 days later, I had a job making $80,000. I was making 40 when I got fired. I got a job making 80 grand. And now I was no longer the junior trader. I was like covering the biggest trader in the world at Enron on a trading desk that wasn't necessarily very good, but now they were like real good because they were seeing like order flow from the biggest trader in the world. And very quickly I became like an important player on that team because I had the biggest relationship. So literally what I thought was like the worst thing that could have happened. Like, what am I even going to do? I don't have anywhere to go. No one's going to pay my bills. I'm totally screwed here. It became the slap that changed my life. All of a sudden, I'm within 2 or 3 months at the new place. They raised my salary to $125,000, which it might as well have been $100 million compared to where I had been. And very quickly, I got a job running commodity sales and trading in London, all of Europe and Asia for Kenneth Fitzgerald. So I was working in London, flying back and forth from London to New York on the Concorde, like. Couple months before, I was like taking the bus from Boston to New York, and now I'm flying to London on the Concorde, which was insane. I mean, it all happened so very quickly.
When I think about as being a first round draft pick and what that would do for your self-esteem and ego, in relationship to coming from where I come from, coming from where you come from, what did that do for your ego and your self-esteem? Now you're the guy.
In a lot of ways, I had those positive vibes of like, yeah, I'm the guy. But inside I was like, I'm a fraud and I have imposter syndrome. Like I'm not supposed to be here. When they find out how dumb I am, they're going to fire me. And all of a sudden that fear of having money and losing it was 10 times worse than the thought of never having money. Cause now I was like, oh my God, I've done it. But what if I make a mistake? And it was like an irrational fear. And again, along the lines, along with the theme of like the worst things that could happen end up being like the biggest blessing. The best things that you could think could happen end up being somewhat of a curse. for whatever reason, when this happened, I'm dealing with mad anxiety. I'm like super stressed all the time. I'm having to be aggressive in a way that I'm not really comfortable being aggressive, but it's the only way I know to survive in this like job. And I had a minor ankle surgery and got some Percocet, and now those Percocet became the answer to all my anxiety and all my concerns. And within the course of probably 2 or 3 months, I'm taking, 5 to 10 Percocets 3 or 4 times a day, every day for 10 years.
And how would you get those prescriptions?
Oh, I was a hustler, man. I was the most resourceful drug addict in the world. I had money and I was like a street kid at heart. Yeah. So I would have like, this is, again, it's harder to do that today because they have like, there's
regulations
like
on
regulations and there's a network of, you have to controlled substances. A doctor can go in and see your history of getting prescriptions for controlled substances. So but back then they didn't really have that. It was also very new. The pain pill epidemic hadn't really kicked off yet. I was like ahead of my time.
Yeah.
And
this is still pre-kids.
Pre everything. Yeah. This is in like 2000.
So you're definitely not sleeping. You definitely,
I
running
was
hard.
I was drinking, doing coke, taking pills, but pills were my main thing. I would take them every day. I mean, you couldn't, that kind of drug, you don't take a couple days off. You get very sick if you stop taking them after a few months. And
how did you function at a high level in that kind of job?
When you take them, you'd be high for like an hour or two, and then there would be like this come down where you start to feel shitty and then feel real shitty. So it was a constant ebb and flow of like highs and lows of like, my personality was probably very unpredictable to most people. And look, some people, those drugs don't resonate with them. They don't respond well. They don't like the feeling. But for me, it was like,
I hated it.
Yeah. So I'm jealous. I wish I did too.
After any surgery, I mean, I've had 3 shoulder surgeries. My first labrum surgery, I had 10 anchors put in the shoulder.
Yeah.
And I remember coming from under anesthesia, and I'm laying there thinking like, man, this doesn't feel good. And then I couldn't go to the bathroom. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm not taking this. And I remember I went 3.5 months sleeping in a zero gravity chair because I wouldn't take the pain meds. Yeah. Because that pain was so excruciating.
I know. I had that surgery, man. It was horrible. But yeah, it was just the perfect storm for me. And every country has different kind of medical service, different healthcare. And in London, you could have private doctors. And, if you're paying a private doctor, it's kind of like if he doesn't prescribe what I want, he probably knows I'm not going to call him again. Yeah, okay. And very early in the relationship, I could tell he was showing up drunk sometimes. So I knew he was like struggling himself, and I'd pay him cash and basically off the books. So I'd give him 200 pounds, British pounds, and he would write a prescription for anything I wanted. And that was really what was the foot on the accelerator, because very quickly I was getting 100 Oxycontin pills, like 80 milligram pills. And I was just off to the races, and it was horrible. You say how did you function? In hindsight, I don't even know how I did it. It seems fucking crazy, and it was.
It's kind of like retired from football, and you realize when you're sitting on the couch and you're watching a game, and you see someone pull around and get smacked, and you're like, you get jarred, and you're like, oof, shit, did I do that my whole career? It's like you feel like you was hypnotized through that whole period of playing college and professional football, because it's intense. So my question for you now is, are you going this 10-year run of doing this? And what was the moment that you realized Ken, I gotta make a change for myself?
I was able to get sober a handful of times, just white knuckling it, just lock myself in a room and just be sick for a week, and sick, like real sick. And I would get a week or two of sobriety. And then I would eventually just slowly convince myself that it was okay to take 1 or 2 here and there. But that would only last for a day or two before I was back on, I had to take them to wake up. I had to take them to go to sleep. It was horrible. And then even when I got married, I was still lying and cheating and telling my wife I wasn't doing things. Cause then eventually I was introduced to Subutex, which is kind of like methadone for people that don't know. It's like a withdrawal medication, but you're still under the influence. So it's you're still getting some of the negative effects of the drug, but you're not really getting high. You're just not going into withdrawals. Right. But that changed my personality massively and made me like very irritable. So there were a few times where my wife would find those pills in like my bag, work bag or something, and I would just have some song and dance and big story. And then eventually I went to an outpatient detox when we adopted my daughter from Ethiopia. We got the notice, okay, you're approved for adoption. You can go and get her on this date. And I just realized like, I cannot do this anymore. And honestly, I was like, if I can't do this, like, I don't know that I can keep living. I don't know if I can be alive anymore. This is just, I don't want to be alive like this. And I went to an outpatient detox facility and they gave me a bunch of different medications to help with the withdrawal symptoms and made it a little bit less painful, but it still sucked. And that was when I really started running because that was the only thing that I could control. Like I couldn't control. Like I wake up every day, like rolling dice and feel like, please God, let this be a good day. Yeah. And I wake up and immediately make an assessment. And I just started running and I started running 10 miles every day. And I was just killing myself. Like if I didn't feel good, like I said, I'd push so hard that I'd be like, well, at least if I drop dead out here, like I didn't actually have to kill myself, but the pain is over.
How did you pick 10 miles? Was it 10 miles? Like, was it a number that just like, I got to get to the highest of the highest intensity that I can get to just so I don't.
Yeah. I was like, that seems like punishment enough, but seemed like doable, but not that it was going to take so much time that I couldn't get it in before I went to work every day.
Yeah. And this is coming from, what age were you when you started this?
So I was on the drugs probably 30 to 40. So around 40 years old, just been married. I don't have any kids yet. And I was always like working out like a normal person. I'd go to the gym. I boxed a lot. So I was in decent shape, but not like where you would see me and be like, oh, that guy definitely works out. And
do you know how impressive this is? Because I'm going to tell you a story for you. So I'm just retired from football thinking like, oh man, you know what? I'm sitting there at the summertime. We're out in Eastern Washington hanging out, seeing all these young, fit people running by, and I was a 320-pound lineman, but I was fit, I felt like I was fit. And so I get up and in the morning times thinking like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna get up and start running. I'm gonna start with a mile and see where I go. But I need to get up before everybody else start their track. And so I get up and I go out one morning about 6 o'clock in the morning and I start, Ken, I don't even know if I got a half a mile. My knees locked up, my back locked up. And I said,
that's a lot of weight to run. I said,
screw this, man. I turned around and walked back to the house. And I remember sitting on the porch, sitting on my Adirondack chair, sitting there drinking coffee, watching everybody else run by. And I'm like, good for them. I'm just clapping everybody. Never tried it again. So for you to go from not really training to run to just waking up one day saying, I'm gonna go run 10 miles, and you hit that 10 miles the first time you run it. And man, that's really impressive.
Thanks, man. I didn't know any other way. I would have much rather been an NFL player than a runner. But and then through the run, I got a bike, and then I started swimming because I saw they had a triathlon out in Long Island there where my in-laws had a place, and we would go out to this place. It's called Shelter Island at the end of Long Island. And I saw they had a triathlon, and I'm like, well, I'm running. And how hard is riding a bike? Yeah. And I got a bike. I didn't know how to swim. I knew how to swim, like to go water skiing and stuff. Like I could swim, but I didn't know how to swim laps. Right. I didn't know how to really swim. So I went but this is like, again, this is like for anyone listening, it's like, well, who'd you take swim lessons from? I'm like, fucking no one. I showed up at the New York Athletic Club, jumped in the pool, and they were like literally former Olympic swimmers in the lane next to me. And I was like, hey, buddy, do me a favor. Watch me swim down and back and tell me what I'm doing wrong. And as soon as people see that you're willing to get out there and try, they're like, oh, hey, here's when you're doing this stroke, reach for this and do this and turn your head this way. And the next thing you know, like I became like the pet project of all the like really elite swimmers. And they were like, do this, do that. And every day someone would help me with something, but nothing would substitute for jumping in the pool and swimming every single day. So I would run in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I'd either ride my bike on the indoor trainer, or I'd swim, or I'd lift weights. So I got into the point where I was training twice a day, every day for like a long time. And I did the triathlon out there and came in like 20th out of like maybe 200 people. But then I went back the following year, came in third overall. And I was like, holy shit, I bet I can win some of these races. And that was really when I started like training for endurance sports. And I ended up qualifying and racing at the Hawaii Ironman 3 times. And just with the 4 kids, the training for an Ironman was so intense. It was way too selfish.
Yeah.
It was literally 20 hours a week of training. So I slowly transitioned in like 2015 to just running. So I would ride my bike as a form of recovery. So I would do like maybe 100 to 200 miles a week on my bike because I loved it.
Wow.
But I was still running 10 miles every day. I didn't ride my bike. And I started focusing on marathons. And when I started focusing solely on marathons, that's when I like really started to improve.
Yeah. How long did it take you as you looking in the rearview mirror, pushing with your running, that the substance piece kept getting further and further away from you?
That the addiction part?
Yeah.
I felt like it was never that far behind it. And even now it doesn't. It always feels like it's like right behind me. Like, hey, whenever you're ready, come on back. We're having a great time over here.
Yeah.
That's the thing that sucks about addiction for people listening. Like before you even get started, just know that like never really goes away. Yeah. There's always like, anytime things go wrong, it's like a crutch. You always feel like, well, I guess I could get high and forget about this for a day or two. But what you realize is all you're doing is prolonging the agony. You're just prolonging the difficulty of anything you're trying to avoid doing is, it's only going to exasperate the problem.
I want to talk about your mindset now.
Yeah.
This mindset that you've cultivated and developed now over this time. Now you're winning races. You're becoming a guy that people look at and say, man, this guy, he has it going on. You're out there, you're running against pros on paper. You're not supposed to be there.
That's right.
What was that mindset that you had that was pushing you when your body was breaking down at mile 22?
Yeah.
That self-talk that you had to keep pushing yourself along.
It's funny, even when you say that, like, I don't see myself that way. I still see myself as like the drug addicted loser at times who's just trying to like survive. And I would say when it came to training and racing, the races are always won and lost months before. It all happens in training by yourself. And I would say that I always made a habit of training like I could never win. And I would race like I could never lose. I believed when I showed up, I was like, you'll have to kill me to beat me. I convinced myself even before like the Boston Marathon, I'm like, well, until these people beat me, I have a good chance of winning. And, most people would say that's irrational and crazy. And yes, I know, but that's the only way I knew to do it. And at the end of the day, in a running race, no one's going to punch your face or choke you unconscious when you get tired like they would in a fight. So from that perspective, all the pain is self-chosen. Like it's at your discretion. And the question is like, how much pain can you take before your body just physically won't do it anymore? And it's a lot. And I think that that's been the one big differentiator between me and a lot of other runners is like, I always feel like I'm exploring that kind of, where's that line? Like how much more can I do? And there are days, I've had days where you get there and you're like, okay, this is the line. I can't do it anymore. Like I'm seeing stars. I'm dizzy. I feel like I'm going to, die. And you still got 5 miles to go. It's like a horrible, empty feeling. And people who have done like longer endurance races know that feeling of like, oh my God. But that's when you realize like, wow, human body is incredible. I can't believe it's still going. Like I thought I was going to drop dead an hour ago and I'm still here. But the beauty of that mindset part is that it's available to everyone. Anyone who wants to be, I hesitate to say overachiever, but anybody that wants to like be really good at something, you have to realize that a big part of it is just showing up and having the right mindset. And the race and the performance is all dictated like so far in advance. when you're running in the snow and the rain and the neighbors are looking at me like I'm crazy, like this guy's
No days off.
Yeah, and everyone thinks you're not an idiot until you win, especially at this age. Like I know that there were a lot of people that were like, oh, this guy's an idiot. He's out here training all the time for what? And then all of a sudden I start to win races and I'm in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and I'm starting to like, my career is starting to improve. I have a book deal and it's like all these things start clicking. It's like until those things happened, I was like the idiot who was still trying to prove something to someone, but I was just doing what I needed to do to survive. And it's like anyone that's done anything extraordinary, like winning races at 50, has to be doing things that ordinary people don't do.
Right.
And there's no shortcuts. There's no like hack. There's no cheat code. It's like, every run that I do, I post it on the social media app called Strava. You can see every single mile, every step. You can see the route I ran. You could see my heart rate, everything. And I've posted everything that I've ever done since 2012 on that app. Every single workout and race.
What happens when you get snowed in? How do you still motivate yourself to do stuff when you just absolutely can't?
It's not
physically get out with.
Yeah, it's not motivation. It's discipline. I don't feel motivated. I don't want to do it a lot of times, but I'm like, my life has changed immensely for the better since I started living a disciplined, strict lifestyle. And I got snowed in Alta, Utah one time for 4 days. They have an interlodge there. When they get so much snow, they legally won't let you out of the house. They'll arrest you because there's avalanches and stuff. And I would just do a lot of push-ups and stuff in the house. And then eventually you could go out in the driveway. So I kept shoveling the car out. I'm talking like 5 feet of snow. And eventually I shoveled out on the driveway was about 100 yards. And I just shoveled a clear path wide enough for me. And I run back and forth like 8 miles. And it's in a full snowsuit and boots. And I posted that on Strava and people were like, it looks like there's a glitch in the system. It looks like you were just going back and forth. I was like, yeah, I was. People were like yelling out the window, watching, because it took a long time, maybe like 90 minutes because the snow was so deep and I was in boots. But you just make do. It's like, if you were getting ready for training camp and they were like, the gym's closed, a hurricane hit it, you'd be like, all right, well, let me go find some rocks or something. You just do something.
Yeah, you are a completely different animal. Completely different animal. Now as you've kind of been doing all this work internally, you've been doing this, this running for a long time, and you've established yourself. And you said earlier that, you still think of yourself as this, poor, addicted, guy.
Yeah.
Has that internal self-talk, has that changed as you've grown emotionally and spiritually?
I think that you have to have honest conversations with yourself. And what people don't realize is the way you talk to yourself is very important. So I have, like anyone, days where I think like really positively about myself and other days where I have negative thoughts about myself. But you have to remember that like no one can control that for you. You're in charge of you. You're responsible for your own mental and physical health. It's the only thing. No one else can do anything about it. If I think I'm a loser, well, then I probably am. And if I think I'm a winner, I can also be that too. Mm-hmm. I think the thing that you have to realize is if there's one theme from this like self-talk, it's like whatever you think, it's true. Why waste time thinking that you're thinking negative thoughts about you? Yeah. There's plenty of people out there that are going to hate you for your success. Let them deal with the negativity. You really just want to keep in mind of who you are. Keep your eyes on the prize, especially for young kids. I'm like, man, I wish I knew some of this stuff when I was younger. But that's why I always emphasize when I am lucky enough to talk to college kids. I've spoken to a lot of college teams. It's like when you have a chance to be around people that have done something that you want to do or that have a lot of experience in any area, you have to remember, I always tell them, I'm 54, especially kids who are like 20. I'm like, you imagine all the shit you're going to know in 34 years. That's what I know. Yeah. And I've lived a full life. So when I tell you that this is what I think will happen, like you should listen to that. And not necessarily that you listen to me, but like there's a lot to be learned by listening to people who've come before you and done things that you want to do, even if it's not exactly what you want to do, whether it's working in finance or playing sports. It's like, hey, these are some things that I've learned along the way that you should really want to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great advice. All right. Now, I know you watch football. I like to do a segment called 2 Minute. And I'm going to give you, it's a rapid fire, just easy toss ups for you. Favorite race you've ever run?
Favorite race? I mean, I love the Boston Marathon, but I won the Gobi March across the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. That was like 6 days, 150 miles, self-supported, meaning I had to carry everything I needed and I had no experience. I didn't know anything about camping. You know, I grew up in the city. I don't know how to camp. I don't know how to shoot guns. I've never done any, like I have no man skills other than fighting. Like if I was on the show alone, I'd be dead in a week. And I won that race with 4 weeks of training, and that was pretty awesome. And obviously the Boston Marathon, I won the Masters, the 50 and over division. I ran 2:30, 2 hours, 30 minutes and 20 seconds. That was pretty cool. So probably either the Boston Marathon or the Gobi March in Mongolia. And just going to Mongolia, like what the fuck am I doing in Mongolia? But I'm like, when I got there, I was like, I'm here, I'm killing everybody. Even though in my head I was like, oh my God, I don't even want to sleep in a tent. I'm a pussy. I don't want to be in the tent. I want to be at the Four Seasons. I want to eat I need to sit down lunch with a waiter. I need to relax like a gentleman. So that was very hard for me to carry in all the freeze dried food, and being dirty, not showering for a week was very difficult. I'm like 2-3 showers a day type of person.
You did it. You did it.
I did it.
Hardest day of training you've ever had?
Hardest day of training? Probably like training with my buddy Rob Moore, who produces the Andrew Huberman podcast, the Huberman Lab podcast. Rob and I did so much training together, but probably like 100-mile bike ride up in the mountains in Malibu. There were just so many of them. They all blur into one, but those are like really hard days because you've got to manage food, hydration. Nothing will destroy you like a long, 100+ mile bike ride through the mountains. But there was a 50-mile running stage in Mongolia with a 20-pound backpack. That was pretty damn hard. It wasn't training, but it was racing. But man, I finished that and thought well, the good news is I finished and came in first. The bad news is I don't think there will be anyone left to race tomorrow because I can't believe everyone's going to survive this. And ultimately, someone did die at that race in Mongolia. Yeah, it was crazy.
That's unbelievable.
And they had to get the body out with a camel because they couldn't even get trucks into the sand dunes. Oh, dude, it was crazy.
Yeah, that's traumatizing.
Oh, multiple days during that race, I was like, I can't believe that they're putting this race on. Like, this is so dangerous. Climbing up like cliff walls with the backpack on, and there were people there like in their 70s. They were like, it was crazy.
Wow. A quote you live by and that you stick with every day.
I would say back to my mindset thing, like whatever you think, it's true. So you better control the way you're thinking.
All right. One race you wish you can do over?
Berlin Marathon. I ran 2:35 there in 2022. I ran the 6 world marathon majors. So Boston, New York, Chicago, London, Berlin, and Tokyo. I wanted to win the 50 and over age group in all of them, and I won 4, and I got second in Berlin and London by less than a minute. I got second, and in Berlin, I just completely fell apart. I went super hard early in the race, and I ran 2:35 and came in second there, but I'd like to do that one again.
That's good. That's good. All right, well, we're going to transition a little bit more into a question we was talking about right before the show. One person that you can think of, or 2 people that you can think of that's pushed you, that they didn't even really know that it was pushing you, that's contributed to some of the great successes that you've had in your life?
Yeah, well, in my professional career, there was one guy who gave me a chance to transition from sales and trading into business development in LA, a guy called Jack McDowell, who ran a asset manager called the Palisades Group. And they had a couple $2 billion in assets under management. And he was an avid cyclist. And I was riding my bike with him for probably for a year, every weekend, hundreds of miles. And I was like, hey, why don't you let me come run business development for you and bring in some more assets? We'll raise a discretionary fund, raise like a private equity style fund. And he was like, well, you don't have any experience and we're friends and it's going to be, hard. And I was like, well, no one has experience until they do it. And I convinced him to let me do it. I eventually said, I'll work for free for 3 months. Let me just come in and see if I can do it. And he was like, okay. And, it ended up changing my life. And this guy was like, he was at times very hard on me. And like, we worked hard, but we grew that from like 2 to 5 billion in assets under management. We raised 3 different discretionary funds. Things were going so well. He basically came to me and said, you should be doing this placement agent work, like raising money for third parties as a career on your own. And of course I was like, I don't only ever worked for other people. And you know what they say in life, you're either working on making your own dreams come true or someone else's. Yeah. And I was like, but it's easy to say that. It's hard to do it when you have a family. And Jack was like such a good dude that he was basically like, look, I'm going to pay you like, I don't know if it's 30 or 40,000 a month, every month for the next year to just go do what you want to do. Like I had raised a few funds. So like in finance, you get paid a percentage roughly on the kind of business that you're doing. And so I'd earned some money, but this was like incredibly, incredibly generous. And he did it. And I just went out and started grinding and just had some early success, and it launched the career that allows me to do the things that I'm doing now, which, if you work for someone else and you have a career, like a salaried job, it's very difficult to explore different business opportunities as they come up if you're tied to a trading desk and have obligations and are getting paid by someone. So Jack McDowell was one person that was like, had a huge, profound impact on my life. And the other person was probably my friend Rob Moore, who, like I said, produces the Andrew Huberman Lab podcast. And Rob was a training partner for a long time. We moved from New York to LA. Coincidentally, we didn't know each other, but we moved at the same time. And when we got to LA, we started training together for Ironman. And we both left corporate jobs at roughly the same time. And we worked on so many different mandates together. He was a PR guy and like a kind of like an operations guy. So he met up with Andrew Huberman, kind of mastermind the whole Huberman Lab podcast. We worked on a bunch of, we worked on a mandate for a guy called David Sinclair, who wrote the book Lifespan. Rob did the PR for his book. Rob was a PR guru. So he's advised me on all things PR related. He's just been an awesome friend and like such a good sounding board. And again, not a pushover at all. Like when he doesn't agree with something, he's not afraid to voice his opinion. So it's not all like, rainbows and fairy tales. It's like, sometimes you just got to get some tough love and some brutal honesty.
Got to have a guy like that in your life.
Exactly.
You got to. Well, as a runner, and that's what a lot of people think of you as. Like, what are you doing today outside of what you do for, I would say you do this running for pure enjoyment, because there's no way that I'm going to get up and go run that way. But what are the other things you're doing now that people can tune into and listen to?
Yeah.
Not just the running aspect of things.
Yeah. No, I have a book coming out. I just turned in the first pass of the manuscript, with being published by Simon & Schuster. I started because of the running and some of the success I've had, I've got a lot of brand partnerships, and I've raised money for a lot of brands in the health and wellness space. So as a result, I had a bunch of different brand partnerships. Like I have a sponsorship with Reebok. They, give me running shoes, pay me to wear their running shoes. And that's been just a dream come true. I mean, imagine like, at 50 years old, I have a shoe deal.
I miss my shoe deal.
And I have.
Can you help me get a new shoe deal?
Of course.
17s are hard to find, man.
That's a big shoe. But I had and I've had I have a bunch of supplement deals with our friend Jeff Byers at Momentous, who coincidentally you played with in Seattle. Yeah. Jeff Byers, awesome guy. And I helped him with some of the capital raising, and just so through that I had deep connections. And just recently I launched a sports management business, like basically helping we don't really manage influencers per se, but we're managing experts and thought leaders. So we manage brand deals for a number of different scientists and doctors. I'm managing brand partnerships for Bilal Muhammad, who's the welterweight UFC champion. Even saying that now, I'm like, I can't believe that I've done this. I literally have created like my dream life. If I could have scripted this as a kid, this is what I wanted to do. So I do that. It's called Rideout Sports and Entertainment. I'm about to launch a podcast with Rob Moore from the Huberman Lab podcast. We're going to talk to people who've overcome incredible adversity along the lines of my own story, where even if it was self-induced, I've got a couple of guests lined up that are former convicts that did a lot of time in prison, got out, and had wildly successful careers. I'm going to talk to athletes who've dealt with serious adversity, whether injury, addiction. We've got some like really high profile, really cool guests lined up. And so I'm super excited about that. And I just love the whole art of storytelling and motivating and like sharing experiences with others to let people know, like, contrary to what everyone thinks, like, you realize, and you know this from playing football at such a high level, everyone's the same. Mm-hmm. This guy's just a couple steps faster than you, and it's changed his life. Mm-hmm. And now he's like not, Marshawn, insurance salesman. Right. He's Marshawn Lynch beast mode. Right. And it's like, when you realize that we have a lot more similarities with the people that we admire and respect than differences, I think it can be very inspiring and motivational to realize, like, well, because what I say to people, especially when I'm like doing talks and I do a lot of speaking, is like, you should be looking at me and think, if that idiot can do this, then I can too, because there's nothing special going on here. I am like the most average guy in the world. The only thing that is different or above average in me is my mindset. And that's all up to me and up to you and anyone watching to be like, well, if he convinced himself that he could do this, then I can too. Everything I did, like I said, I shared it on Strava. You can go back and look at every run that I've ever done, and bike ride, everything. And there's nothing special going on. It's just hard work. Yeah. And when it gets to like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to run 10 miles every day. Okay. After like 2, 3, 4 weeks, when you're into month 7 and it's snowing or it's like a hurricane outside and there's a tornado sirens are going off, over there where I'm just like, damn. Gotta get up and my wife's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, look for cover if the lightning starts striking, I guess. She's like, you going to go? I'm like, yeah. It's not a choice. It's my responsibility to myself.
Yeah. Well, as you think about this world that, young athletes are in right now with the transfer portal, NIL, you're keeping up with a lot of that. A lot of these kids they're chasing highlights. What advice would you give them that is going to help them bypass the tangible things, their athletic ability, to really focus on the intangibles that make them who they are, that they should be focused on as they're making transition through sports, through life, that's going to be hugely beneficial for them?
Well, I think a good example of how not to handle things is if you look at what happened with Shedeur Sanders, like the whole social media circus around him. I think had he just focused on the football and not been so vocal about all the other stuff. And look, I get it. You want to make money, and you're responsible for you, and you've got to create a brand. But I think that there is a way to create the brand without making yourself seem like you're bigger than the team or bigger than the process. And again, I don't know too much about him, but just from the outside looking in, I think a lot of teams didn't want the show that went with certain guys. And when you're playing on a team and you got one guy that's bringing drama, like, it's hard enough to win at the highest level. If you look at like all the Patriots teams, like they didn't have people that had like a whole entourage of people and a whole off the field kind of vibe going on around them. And I think that you want to definitely create this is a whole new world for these kids with the NIL and the transfer portal. So you do want to create a brand around yourself, but the same way you can manufacture this like glamorous, glitzy life, you can also manufacture and show how much hard work you're doing and make the off-field antics all about training. Right. And this is like a whole new frontier for these kids, and the people that are really good at it, they're highlighting their true highlights and recognizing that social media isn't real. The social media is a highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
People don't post bloopers on Instagram. And I just think that, more than ever, you really need advisors and mentors around you, especially kids, to kind of like keep them in check and recognize, like, do you want to play football or do you want to be an influencer?
Right.
And listen, there are influencers out there that are like fabulously wealthy. That's the problem. Is like everybody thinks they're going to be like Jake Paul. Jake Paul is like, he's a serious athlete. I mean, gets in the ring and fights with real guys, but you can just see him, like, even when he's clowning around, you can see the kid has athletic ability.
Yeah.
Like he's an athlete. But then you see these clowns that are out there pulling pranks and shit and doing crazy things to strangers in public. And I'm like, oh my God, someone's going to get their like chin checked. I just think that you have to, if you really want to be a professional athlete at the highest level and you have those gifts, you have to keep your eyes on the prize and you have to stay focused and you can't get caught up in this bullshit. There's more distractions than ever. Social media for kids, like, it's the bane of my existence with my kids because I'm like, stop with if I see this device again, I'll break it in half until everything's done. And it's just like, man, it's like poison for kids. As a parent, I'm like, I don't want them on there because there's so many bad influences, but
it's not easy at all, but you just touched on I got a couple more questions for you. Now that you're a father, you're a business guy, you're a competitor, when you strip all that away, who is Ken Rideout? And do you like that person that you see?
What's funny? I was telling my wife this. I know, like, at my core, I'm a kind person. But I could see where my kids are like, my dad is crazy because I'm constantly on them because I know how hard life is. And when I see them making mistakes and taking the easy way out and like it's very difficult. I know that extreme discipline has given me the life I wanted. That means I don't leave clothes on the floor. I do everything that has to be done, like a militant.
Right.
When I see them not doing it, I am constantly trying to explain to them. I'm like, no. Leaving this here, that escalates into then now someone else has to do it. Mm-hmm. 6 people live in this house. Why should one person, me or your mom, do 6 people's work if everyone does their own work? So in that regard, I think that there are things that I definitely don't like. I don't like being so aggressive with the kids. I wish that there were parts of me that could be more chill, go with the flow. It's just, I see it happening in real time and I'm like, just take a deep breath. And then there's another voice in my head that's like, no deep breaths. There's no days off. We need to fix this right now.
Don't let it slide.
That's it.
Because and I wish thinking about how it slid for you.
That's right.
You don't want it to slide for them.
That's right. And I get so overly concerned about making sure that they get everything right. I don't care if they do, or if they're good at sports, but I do care that they try the hardest. And that struggle for me is something that is very difficult because I'm like, dude, do you think you were trying out there? Because I'd argue you don't even care. And that drives me crazy. But I also see some of the parents that are living vicariously through the kids that are way too involved. And I'm like, I don't want to be that. So when I think that the question is super complex because there's so many different roles that I'm playing right now.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, that's what's really adding a lot of anxiety and difficulty to my life. Like I have so many different roles and I want to do them all well. And it's, you don't want to sound like a complainer, but I feel like overwhelmed at times where I'm like, oh, just give me a break. Can someone do this job for me today?
Well, I would tell you, hearing it from me watching you as a father and watching you, not letting little things slide with your kids. They're going to appreciate it down the road, but also it's not just that, it's the loving side that you're also able to come alongside them on the other side and love on them.
Yeah.
Give them a hug, let them know how much you care for them, and then spend that one-on-one time with them. And so I don't think your kids think that you are crazy. They know at some point, they may not get it now, but at some point in life, they're going to come back and say, thanks, Dad. And so
I hope so.
I think you're doing an amazing job with transitioning and taking care of your family, showing up for them, because you didn't have that person to show up for you.
No.
And so it's important for you to show up for them. All right. So my last question for you is, this has been unbelievable. My last question for you, I like to leave off with this, is 1 or 2 intangibles that has made Ken Rideout who he is today.
I think the most important thing is the mindset, and you can't really quantify the intangibles, right? So you can't really quantify how important mindset is. And by far the two main things will be mindset and discipline. Like no one can beat my discipline. And by being disciplined, that's going to win a lot of races or challenges or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish in life, business, finance. You just have to be disciplined. It's so easy to let things slide with the kids, with your life, with your workouts, with your diet. You know how easy it would be to just every night be like, you know what? I worked out hard today. I'm going to have some ice cream. Yeah, that's cool. Every night? Okay, at the end of the week, you've eaten a gallon of ice cream. And I know because I do shit like that. And then I'm like, oh, I worked out so hard. And you can never out-train a bad diet. Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean about letting things slide. It's like, you got to kind of pick your spot. You also want to have fun too. I'm not like trying to be a lunatic out here, right? I try to have fun, but finding the balance there and just, I think, you know, when I reflect now, like on my life with my kids in particular, it's like, I do wish that I could be a little bit more relaxed with them. I just feel like with 4 of them, I'm like, I got to be on top of everything. But,
they get to the age now where it's that part of it is going to become more relaxing.
Yeah.
The foundation has been laid. So
yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Well, Ken, I hope this was as fun for you as it was for me.
I always love talking to you, dude.
Diving into your story. I mean, what a unbelievable, amazing story it is. And I'm very proud and thankful to be your friend. And I still, again, I look at some of the stuff you're doing and it continues to drive and push me. So thank you for jumping in and jumping on the Intangible Podcast with me.
Well, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure. And I love watching all your success. And I love seeing you kind of find your groove here and seeing some of the guests. It's been awesome. I said the show the other day, I was like, oh shit, Chris is doing it. He's got this show is good. So good for you, man. I know this ain't easy, so keep going.
Appreciate it.